Hello.
Yeah, can I please speak to Larry? This is Dave Duenas and Gabriel Montoya from Leaving the Ring Radio.
I'm good. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Hey, thanks for taking the time to speak to us, especially right now in and what particularly is going on in your career, which has got to be a death blow to yourself. Being suspended for 4 years. I'm going to let my co-host pick it up from there because I know he's been itching. He's been wanting to talk to you, and he set this all up, and he's going to set the tone of the interview. So go ahead, Gabriel.
No, Larry.
Yeah.
Most of the American fans, UK fans know UK fighters. We know some of the stars that come over. You guys know some of the stars that come over, and it's likewise here in the U.S. So first off, let's just start off. Introduce who you are in the sport, your division. You're a heavyweight. How long have you been fighting? How did you get into fighting? Because I know you had a background in another sport beforehand. So just give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. Basically, I used to be a sprinter, specializing in 100 meters and 200 meters. And I got seriously injured twice. I pulled my hamstring, and the second time it was quite bad. And I didn't have the funds at that time to really treat myself well. So it got to the point where I really had to give up track and field. But the thing is, when I had the off seasons from track and field, I always used to go and do boxing training because I just love boxing. Once I gave up track and field, I decided to start boxing full time. And that's how I basically started out. Then I then had an amateur career, and then decided to turn pro afterwards. Turned pro in 2008. Had 13 fights, 10 wins, 3 losses, and currently find myself in the situation I'm in now, where I'm banned for 4 years for taking performance-enhancing drugs.
Now, how did that lead into that? I mean, how did they find out? Did you disclose that on your own, or was this during testing and then it just came about?
Basically, what happened was the Americans started an operation called Operation Raw Deal, and the information they gleaned from that, they fed back to the UK anti-doping people over here. That my name obviously came up, my address, that I've been ordering stuff from China to my address. So UK anti-doping then target tested me in my last fight because of that information. And when they announced that I tested positive, they then informed me that they had this evidence against me and that the emails that they had stretched back to 2007. So they asked me to cooperate with them and to tell them basically about my usage from when they had that information. Now, I didn't have to. I could have just accepted a ban and that's it. But, I decided that, everyone should know what's going on, basically, what I was using and also how I was able to get away with it for so long. And that's why I decided to basically tell them everything that they wanted to know.
Now, were you introduced to any of the supplements that you were putting into your body? It was 13 different types of supplements you were putting in. So were you introduced to this through a conditioning coach or a coach or a boxing coach, or was this just something that merely that you decided to kind of find out a little bit more and dig yourself?
This actually went back to my sprinting days because my use started then. And then I was introduced to it by another sprinter, and obviously I read Speed Trap by Charlie Francis, I knew the facts of life. So when I was introduced to it, I wasn't alien to the whole idea and concept of performance enhancing drugs. So I was introduced to it then, and then when I took up boxing, I from looking around and seeing the different cases and different fires, speaking to a few people, I gathered that the same was happening in boxing. So I decided myself to administer myself with these substances and to form a protocol by myself. I do actually have a degree in pharmaceutical chemistry, so it's I do have knowledge of these substances. So it wasn't very hard for me to be able to do that by myself.
What were the other substances? The 13 substances.
I mean, the thing is, that part of it has been blown out of all proportion because they've reported it as all 13 being performance-enhancing substances, whereas in reality, it was probably 5 or 6 that were performance-enhancing substances, and the rest were things you take to alleviate side effects or to get your testosterone levels back up after, using a course of steroids. So they weren't all performance-enhancing substances. Probably half of what I took was performance-enhancing, and the rest were ancillaries, as they will call it.
Now, let me ask you this, because you were caught with EPO, and that interests me because that's a blood doping. For people that don't know, it's a blood doping drug that increases red blood cells, more oxygen to the blood, more endurance, essentially. It's a cyclist drug of choice. In June 2010, the Nevada State Athletic Commission basically had a debate over whether or not to begin implementing, more blood testing or blood testing in general. And it was shot down by a guy named Dr. Robert Floyd Mayweather's personal physician out of Las Vegas, but was also the chief medical physician for the United States Olympic Committee. He said, we don't need blood testing. Now, as a guy that used EPO, a professional boxer, and got away with it essentially until they target tested you, and they basically caught you through intelligence. What do you think about blood testing in the sport? Do we need it? And is EPO a problem?
You see, blood testing is, first of all, urine testing is actually more expensive than blood testing, which I think a lot of people didn't realize.
Yeah.
Also, blood testing is good for some things, but not for all things. So, for instance, the steroids, yes, blood testing is great. The EPO, not so much, and this is why, for instance, the UCI, guys who run the cycling, they with their blood testing, they only test for your hematocrit. They don't actually test directly in blood for EPO. What they say is, right, your hematocrit cannot go over 50%, because if it goes over 50%, then we deem you to have used either EPO or whatever substance to elevate that level. So as for EPO, I don't necessarily think blood testing is the way to go. Urine testing still seems to be the best way at the moment to be able to find someone who's been using it.
Do you think the testosterone is probably more the drug of choice, or do you think there is a drug of choice, or is it just kind of part of the culture that you use different types of things in order to get some sort of advantage?
I think it depends who you speak to. Some people would say testosterone is the drug of choice because of what they've heard or, what other people are doing, whereas other people like myself will experiment with different things to see which could give the best effect, because everyone's different at the end of the day. What works for one person might not necessarily work for another.
Let me ask you this, because when I read your story and I gathered more information about you, Larry, when I found out it was a 4-year suspension, and then I looked back at other athletes that have been caught, it seemed like the charge was much, much lesser. Why do you think that you got slapped Not with the book, but with the library of law?
Good question, and I'd like the answer to that. Basically, I guess it's because I'm not a commodity like the other guys that you're talking about. I mean, I'm quite well known in my country, but obviously I'm not well known across the world, especially in America. Although that's probably changed now. But for instance, James Toney, I mean, under UK anti-doping rules, would have been banned for life. His first suspension was 90 days. His second suspension was 10 months, less than my first one. You get guys like Roy Jones who tested positive, and nothing happens to them. Some excuse is made, and they get off of it. At the end of the day, these guys have the money, so therefore they can afford the lawyers that I can't afford, and are able to either get a much shorter sanction or get away with it. Basically, they make the little man the scapegoat.
Do you think that they needed somebody to use an example so that when you have reporters like Gabriel or myself or others that are going after these organizations, they can go, well, we have a guy, and we did our job, and here he is. His name is Larry O. Do you look at yourself as you cheated the sport, and this 4-year ban, it's a fittable ban because it fits the crime?
No. To be fair, no, I don't. First of all, looking at the other sanctions that the other guys, bigger name guys, have had, it's not fair. You know, it's not fair, and a lot of people have made a big deal of me making a big deal of that, saying, well, it doesn't matter, you've still broken the rules. But at the end of the day, these are the guys that we look up to. You know, this is one of the reasons why when I look at guys like, when I was younger or just getting into boxing, I look at guys like James Toney, Roy Jones, the guys who are at the pinnacle of our sport, and you see that they're using things. I think to myself, well, first of all, obviously you have to use these things to get to the top or to get to a stage where you can make some money. Second of all, if you do get caught, the sanctions are not likely to be that severe, so therefore you can still get on with your career as these guys have done. So that was my thinking at the time. That was my mind frame at the time. And, you know, I've looked at these guys, seen what they're doing, and concluded, as I did in track and field, as a lot of people did in other sports, that this is what you have to do to reach the top. And I personally feel that there's an unwritten rule between athletes and, you know, boxers included, that this stuff goes on and you just get on with it. You either decide to do it or you don't, but either way, that's the sport. And
you don't look at things now, though. I mean, now that you're in this situation, there's no turning back the clock. There's no undoing the ban, though. That rather than following the rest of the crowd, maybe being an individual and making a different type of stance would have gotten you even further.
Further in the sport, you mean? Yeah,
further in the sport, maybe further in, I don't know, you know, and I hope I don't sound too either arrogant, so I hope you don't take this any way inoffensively. There's nothing against you, but this is going to be a tough question for you, okay? Don't you think that sometimes, even though other athletes are doing this, there's got to be a morale standard, and you crossed it. So there shouldn't be no sympathy and the consequences you have to face because you broke a rule, the rule has been broken, and it's been enforced.
Yeah. I agree with that. But you see, here's the thing. If you break, I'm not disputing that I've broken a rule and I should be punished. I'm not disputing. I've never disputed that. I've never said that shouldn't happen. Yeah, I knew the rules when I came into the sport, and I've broken the rules, and I should be punished. No problem. If everyone else was uniformly punished,
right,
then that's not a problem. If James Toney got 4 years or banned for life, if Shane Mosley got 4 years, then of course it's perfectly applicable for me to receive 4 years, and I'll just shut my mouth and get on with it.
I agree.
The problem for me is that there's no uniformity, you know, in these sanctions, and that probably might have made me think, okay, well, you know what? If this guy got 4 years, that's a large chunk of his career gone. I might not. Maybe even if he's doing it, maybe I shouldn't do it. that might have swayed my thinking, but that didn't happen.